We are having a great time this Thursday afternoon. Beth, you just saw something breaking. Oh, yeah, I saw this yesterday. I actually posted it on our Facebook page. And it is a topic I think we should just jump straight to. Pope Francis.
Yep. He's
made an interesting request to the world.
You know what? My love for this man grows every single day. So, and this is right off the heels of that John Oliver story that we talked a lot about, where John Oliver was calling out all of the TV preachers and created his own nonprofit church organization so that he could collect donations for charity.
Right.
And so Pope Francis, who is going to visit the United States next week, and actually he is going to he was invited by Speaker Boehner to address Congress, which is the first time that has happened in a good long while. I think it's maybe the first time the Pope has ever addressed Congress.
Pope John Paul II addressed Congress.
Oh, he did.
Also, yeah.
So this is the first time since then, though. It's been many
but that's
years.
been since the late 80s.
Yeah.
I think Ronald Reagan was president when that happened.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
So he's coming to the U.S. next week, and he has a message for the world and for the United States, and specifically messages to churches and he is calling for ending tax-exempt status of churches that don't help the needy. The Pope just dropped the mic.
How brilliant! I'm talking about drop the mic. How brilliant is that?
He dropped the mic and then stamped on it.
Elvis has totally left the building in a glass-covered limousine. How first of all, Protestants and the televangelists, the evangelistic Christians, the Protestant bunch, they dismissed the Catholics, period. Although, the Catholic Church is the largest Christian denomination on the planet, and they have a lot of influence. The Creflo Dollars of the world have to be feeling the pain and pressure of a suggestion by someone as influential globally as the Pope, that if a church is not showing the money going to help the needy, that it should be taxed. It should be taxable. How would that? What kind of game changer would that be?
Well, what I like about what he's saying is that he's talking from the point of view from within the Catholic Church. He called out institutions that have opted to enter the hospitality industry while exploiting a legal loophole to keep from paying taxes. And I have to say that this article is according to U.S. Uncut. James Woods wrote this article. And so the quote in here from the Pope is, "Some religious orders say, no, now that the convent is empty, we're going to make a hotel and we can have guests and support ourselves that way or make money." And the Pope says, well, if that is what you want to do, then pay taxes. A religious school is tax exempt because it's religious. But if it is functioning as a hotel, then it should pay taxes just like its neighbor. Otherwise, it's not fair. It is not fair business. I mean, these are unbelievable statements from the Pope. And I really like that he is doing this and calling people out. Lord, there are going to be some angry evangelical prosperity preaching pastors this Sunday. It's only a matter of time now, I think, before some of the conservative Protestant pastors, especially the ones who buy into the prosperity preaching crap, are going to start trying to take down the Pope publicly.
There's no doubt about that.
I think that's the next
That's
step.
the thing, and they're going to be. And I'm not talking about just the ones that are just making a crap ton of money, but don't necessarily have the national, real conservative, right wing Christian credibility. Creflo Dollar doesn't necessarily have that credibility with your 70-year-old white man or woman Christian, but Franklin Graham certainly does.
Oh, what about Pat?
And
Pat, what's his name? From the 700 Club.
yeah, Pat Robertson.
That's the one.
Franklin Graham. Those ultra long-term, Ralph Reed, those long-term ultra right-wing Christian conservatives are going to have a field day moaning and groaning about the Pope's appeal to dismantle the money, the cash cow, in the name of Jesus, where none of Jesus's actual work gets done as part of the process. I salute the Pope for doing that, and I imagine a lot of common sense Team Red Pill, reality-based thinkers would agree that churches need to stop exploiting the kindness and benevolence of people by refusing to help people with the kindness shown.
I mean, just like when we were talking about Creflo Dollar and the fact that they, he was asking for money for a private jet, and on the way to the church where he preaches, people are passing the homes of those in need every single day. How do you pass by those neighborhoods and then give that pastor money for a jet plane?
Or they're passing the former homes of families that have fallen through the cracks.
Yeah.
On the way to that church. And how can they reconcile giving money toward a $65 million luxury jet while ignoring the needs of the community right where they are, and doing so, as I've said, in a tax-free environment? Thank you, Pope, for pointing this out. But I can remind you, Beth, that we had this conversation several months ago when we started running the numbers on what if even the church, all the collective churches, paid the nominal tax rate of American corporations that were taking full advantage of all the loopholes. You would still end up paying roughly 12%. And we know just black churches have collected $480 something billion just in the past, a span of years. And we've calculated over several trillion of total church collections. I mean, imagine 12% of that being spent for welfare. Like, imagine if we funded welfare with the tax money that churches paid, and we took that out of the general fund. That would be really forcing churches to put their money where their mouths are, right?
Yeah.
If we use church tax revenue for human services funding, whether it was, health care or related or food program, food stamps, whatever, we could fund those programs with just the tax money that we would collect from churches. The Pope is right.
He is right. And I just see that with more religious leaders who are respected, such as the Pope, I just see if more and more speak out to this, I really believe that we'll see changes. And I think that people will feel pressure to not go to churches that don't demonstrate their charitable contributions and deeds. I mean, I think that
right.
I think it's going to start becoming a criteria. I mean, I know of a church in Atlanta that is like the singles church. I have no idea what they actually do for the needy, but I know a lot of women who get dressed up to go there thinking that they're going to snag their next husband at that church. It is literally a singles church.
Oh, church is like the club in some areas. Even some of the outfits have gotten to, wow, are we at a day party or are we at
I'm
church?
telling you,
like,
these two women, they were decked out like they were going to the club. And I just couldn't even believe I couldn't believe it. And they, I mean, that was, and that church convenes at 6:00 on a Sunday evening, and there many times there's bar hopping afterwards. And I really I'm just at a loss for what's going on there. And, I guess they're tithing and paying money so that they can have a big old fancy church and, some nice music. And, I guess people there who go feel good about themselves that they're going to church and meeting man at the same time. I don't know. It's that my pastor.
Have you ever done that, Beth?
What?
Gone to church hoping you would find a nice
Find
Christian,
a guy?
a nice Christian guy to
No.
get to hook up with.
No.
No?
No, I have not.
Andre, have you ever gone to church and hoping that you do a little fishing?
I go to QT.
Yeah,
That's my place. I go to QT. Church is not the place. Church is. You know what? You're probably gonna have to need bodyguards after I say this. Church is where all the devils are at. There you have it.
Okay, well, that's ANDRE.
Yeah,
He
all
just
the
dropped
devils
the
are at
mic.
church.
There's a lot of truth
my
in that.
opinion now. I'm telling you now.
Well, there's a lot of truth in that. Look at what we've been talking about this whole time.
Think about it now. Just think about it. All the turmoil is coming from what? Where?
From the so-called Christian folk
Absolutely.
who
There you have it.
keep fighting anything that resembles what Jesus would do. They're against.
Please do not go to church to find your man.
Doesn't that baffle you, Beth? That the very things that the Christian conservatives rail against and the things they fight the hardest are usually things associated with something that Jesus would actually do.
Yeah. Jesus. If
Couldn't get
Jesus were
elected.
around today, not only could he not get elected, but he'd probably be rotting in jail right now in the United States.
Yeah, he would be. His name is Mumia Abu Jamal. And he's not Jesus, but he might as well be because he's that kind of brother. And he's an example of exactly what you just said. He's been rotting in jail for years for a murder he didn't even come close to committing. And it was because his at that time, his radical, it's not my words radical, but he was characterized as a radical revolutionary, black, nationalist. And he was dangerous, and so they put him away. And there, I can name names, tons of other people who are incarcerated to this day as political prisoners. And Jesus would certainly be a political prisoner himself.
Absolutely.
In America, if he were here today.
Well, I mean, that's what he was when he was on this earth before.
That's correct. He was killed. He and back then they didn't have the Supreme Court to give you 4 or 5 appeals for the death penalty. Once you got that death penalty, it was like the Wild West. They strung you up that day.
Yeah.
You appeal, Yeah, they strung you up that day,
Well, related to what we're all talking about here, the Catholic News Agency, they have a website where they do like current news from Vatican City. And this was reported yesterday. This is really interesting. The Pope has to say, our God is a God who is close, who accompanies. Fundamentalists keep God away from accompanying his people. They divert their minds from him and transform him into an ideology. So in the name of his ideological God, they kill, they attack, destroy, slander. Practically speaking, they transform that God into Baal, an idol. He said on a radio interview that aired September 13th, quote, "No religion is immune from its own fundamentalisms," he said. In every religion, there will be a small group of fundamentalists whose work is to destroy for the sake of an idea and not reality. And reality is superior to ideas.
Yeah, that's wow.
I love that.
Now I see why he's the Pope.
It's a really long time.
Yeah, I do too. He's an extraordinary human being.
I'm going to pray for that this Sunday.
He's an extraordinary.
I mean, I would
human
pray
being.
for it every day, but I'm going to pray for it with my church.
Yep. He's an extraordinary human being, and I think we should just be so glad that we have him around to lead an organization as big as the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
He really is bringing very quietly, although very publicly, but very quietly, very humbly, very non-boisterously, bringing about some major transformation of the church right now. This is not reformation that he's bringing. He's bringing transformation to the Catholic Church that I'm witnessing today. He's the modern day John Paul II, because Pope John Paul II was also a great transformational pope and brought about many transformational moments to the Catholic Church during his time. But of course, he spent almost 30 years as pope. And so let's hope that this current pope can have at least a solid another decade plus to reign. I'd love to see him, another 15 years at least would be really cool.
I wasn't as big of a fan of Pope John Paul II. I think he was complicit a lot in the sex scandals that happened in the church and helped people get away with it. I think that's pretty much been proven.
I don't disagree with that. I think that he probably did, but he also transformed the church to a point that made it possible for that scandal to break in the first place. Although he definitely, I think, helped as many as he could. He had his own Schindler's List, if you will, of people that he helped escape the wrath of what was to come. But he certainly didn't do anything to stop that wrath from coming. And perhaps he couldn't have, even if he tried, because it certainly was something, there's still the effects of that are still rippling to this day.
Oh yeah, they are. They are. There's still people who feel estranged from the church because of what happened.